Jason, welcome to the Way of Champions, bud.
Thanks so much for having me, John. Excited for this conversation.
You and I go way back.
We sure do.
I've watched your career go through many iterations with Positive Coaching Alliance, and I'm so excited that we get to talk to you now as the CEO.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise, it's been it's crazy to think coming up on 20 years now at PCA, and so when you have other individuals like yourself that have been doing this work for a long time, it's great to still see some of us still standing, while many new people have come into the space, which is a good thing, right? The more attention to some of the challenges that we're trying to overcome, but always good to have those OGs that have been in the game for a long time.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I get, you guys are the 10,000 pound gorilla compared to what I do with Change in the Game project. And
Yeah,
I get people always like, is PCA your enemy? I'm like, no, they're not my enemy. Like, we're doing the same work, Like,
yeah,
this is like, I've always, you and I mean, right in the very beginning, I think we talked probably like the first,
yeah,
United Soccer Coaches
yeah,
Convention that I went to. And, it was just like, I've always looked at it as like this issues or the issues
mhm,
around youth sports, educating coaches, making a better experience for kids. It's
yeah.
not some tiny pie that we're
No,
fighting over. It's this giant thing that we're all aligned. And obviously, Jim Thompson, the founder
yeah,
before you, he was one of the first ever guests on this podcast. And
yeah,
Jerry and I were on the national advisory board for a
yeah,
while, and
yeah.
it was like, it was just like, no, we're all doing the same thing. And if someone thinks I'm full of it and loves your message, then great. You know?
Yeah, and we always it's a great point, and we often talk about it like allies in the movement, right? Like the people that are doing this that wanna change the culture of youth sports. That's a good thing, and I think what I love seeing, John, is when get your newsletter and seeing some of the different organizations that you're working with, and I even just recently saw something, and I was like, oh, like we worked with them for a while, and great, now they're bringing you in. And that like it's because just like, you look at we're in the midst of, NFL off season and the college basketball season. Coaches change, right? Sometimes you just need a different voice. Sometimes you want to come at something a different way. And I think the fact that, yourself, PCA, you have organizations like the Center for Healing and Justice Through Sports and other training organizations that are doing this. And it's like, depending on where an organization is in their time frame and what they're doing in their lifespan, like they might need something specific or they might need a different voice. And if we can continue to advance the space forward, making sure that kids have the best possible experience, then that's a good thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just had someone reach out to me, I think last week, where I had, an organization that I'd worked for, and their director was like, hey, the Positive Coaching Alliance is running, directors training or something like that.
yeah,
I don't know exactly what you guys call it.
yeah,
What do you think? I'm like, you should go.
yeah,
Like that sounds great. Like
yeah,
I certainly don't have all the answers, and you don't have all the
right,
answers. And
yeah,
so, you have that in your area. Like you should definitely go because
yeah,
you're going to get something great out of it that you didn't hear from me, and vice versa. And so for everyone listening, right, Jason
right,
and I are friends. You know, this is
exactly.
not a
No,
thing
good.
where a gain for one is a loss for the other.
No, everybody, we are all trying to move the space forward, and I think the good thing is, as you said, like the pie, there's a ton of the pie that we haven't even reached yet, right? So I think
Untouched.
that's something where I continue to think about like how do we get that? How do we get there?
Yeah.
Um, but at the end of the day, it's also a space where there's constant fluidity, like new people coming in, people going out. So this is like the space is not going anywhere from the need or the people that might, haven't heard this yet. So we're going to keep doing the work, and we need other allies to be alongside of us in what we're doing. So
Yeah, and I mean, you were just, you have young kids, and
yeah,
they're now. in the starting to see sports. So now we were talking before, right? You
Yeah,
now see it as a parent and not just a coach educator or a
for sure.
parent educator. And so, but you're one of millions who are new into it every year
Yeah.
and millions aging out of it.
Exactly. And my background, even before PCA, coached high school basketball, coached college basketball, like that was how I was showing up. And then obviously I've learned a ton from PCA, and now I'm coaching, 7, 8, 9, 10 year olds, and that's a different ball game from college and high school basketball. But I'm at a different point in my life. I think there's so much that I think here's the thing that I think everybody needs to understand. Like I've worked for PCA for 20 years, and I'm now a youth sports coach and a youth sports parent, and it is extremely difficult. And like,
Yeah.
so I get it, right? So I feel like I am well equipped and like one of the most well equipped people out there in the youth sports ecosystem. And it is really hard to be a parent and think about how do we navigate this and like what's the best for my child right now. And when I do coach, man, it's really difficult to work a full day and then show up to the field and you have 15, 8 and 9 year olds like going crazy, ready to go. And, you don't have an assistant coach and you're like, all right, how do I manage this for the next hour? So
Mhm.
I get it. It's hard. And like, even somebody like myself or yourself that have been doing this is what we do. There are challenges. So I think we need to give everybody a little grace that knows that like, hey, this isn't this isn't easy. But hopefully we can provide those resources to help you along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm about 10 years ahead of you. My kids are in college now, and
Yeah.
knowing what I know and what I studied, what I researched, what I wrote about in books, all of
Yeah.
this, and their mom was a Division 1 athlete and I was a Division 1 athlete,
Yeah.
and it was really hard. And it was
Yeah.
really hard to feel the same pressures that parents feel like, oh my God, like am I letting my kids down by not
Yeah.
signing them up for this extra camp or not
Totally.
forcing them to do something that they don't want to do? Yeah, I mean, I felt those just like you, and standing on a sideline, seeing someone else coach them, and maybe it's not good, and wanting to be like, no, stop, do it better,
Right.
and then having to decide like, is this just difficult and not great, or is this dangerous?
Yeah.
And I need to say something.
Yeah.
And it's really, really hard, you know?
Yeah.
And so yeah, we feel your pain, everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think there's like it continues to be an evolution, right? Of from, being a PCA for 20 years and even like I'm sure you look back on it when you were coaching, you know, what was happening in the society, what were like other things that were going on that were dictating sort of like what was acceptable or what was the norm and trying, and you mentioned PCA founder Jim Thompson, like big on mental models, right? What does it mean to be a coach? And I think when PCA was founded in 1998, people had a sense of like what it meant to be a coach. And now 7 years later, 28 years later, like that is completely different, right? Or
Hmm.
like what makes a good coach, right? Or how does a coach connect with an athlete and how do you motivate a coach? I think that definition has changed. And so just like I love talking to coaches about, that might be set in their ways of like how they communicate and they're so the last thing they want to do is evolve like their style of how they're communicating, even though they've evolved from a strategic standpoint so many different times. But it's that one that's like the last thing that they won't do. They're like, well, kids these days, and it's like, well, you weren't running this type of offense, 10 years ago. That seemed to evolve, so it's just interesting how you think about what it means to be a great coach and how coaches are showing up today, which I think we've seen a lot of good, but that we still have some improvements to make as well.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, man. That and just the way you say that, like if you're the same coach today that you were 30 years ago, you just wasted the last 30 years. Like
Yeah.
you should be,
Yeah.
you're adding offenses, defenses, different types of fitness training.
Yeah.
We understand nutrition better, sleep better, all that. And you're not going, "Ah, I'm not doing that stuff. We didn't need
Right. Right.
sleep back then." You're going, "Oh
Yeah.
wow, yeah, this is going to help my kids better." But then
Yeah.
the idea that I think the thing that coaches that I always assure them that they don't have, you're not giving up your standards, your core values to
Right.
change the way you communicate. You're not
Yeah.
making it, you're not saying, okay, well, it's not going to be hard anymore or
Yeah.
challenging or that I'm not going to be demanding. That has nothing to do with it. You're
Yeah.
just trying to figure out, like you said, how do I motivate? How do I reach them
Yeah.
first? And that's different than it was 30 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, our workshops, it's how do you create that culture and that environment where a child will show up and they feel this sense of belonging, right? And they feel safe, seen, heard, and valued, right? Like it is so important to create that environment because guess what? At the end of the day, that's also how you're going to get the best performance from them, right? So if you're creating this environment where they don't want to show up, they don't want to, work hard, they don't want to be a good teammate, then that's not going to help you from a results standpoint, right? And not that the results are the final thing, but guess what? Like winning is fun and that's okay, right? And winning is a part of sport. And I think that is like one of the things that make sports different than anything else, right? It's that competition. And that's why I really do think that youth sports is one of the most important platforms in our country because if it's done the right way, which is the key, if it's done the right way, then it has the opportunity to change lives. If it's left to its own devices, it can actually be a really bad thing. So that's why we need to continue to equip coaches and parents and organizations with what they need, and people need to be open to evolving as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I always love this idea that, right, sport is neither good nor bad. It's
Right.
neutral.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the hands of the right adults, it can be incredibly positive, and in the hands of the wrong people, it can be incredibly
Yeah.
detrimental and dangerous. But sport itself is neither good nor bad.
Yeah.
And your other point there of like, say you said safe, seen, heard, and valued. Was that sort of
Yeah.
how you said?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that, Jerry and I always talk about the river. If you
Yeah.
feel relevant, important, validated, empowered, respected, that's when
Yeah.
you perform your best. And I always say to coaches, right, if you disagree with that,
Yeah.
try the opposite. See
Right.
how that works, right? And you would never keep a job where you don't feel safe, seen, heard, and valued,
Right.
respected. You'd walk out. You'd always be looking for something else. Like,
Yeah.
we just had Champ Bailey on the podcast, NFL
Mm.
Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
He's like, don't yell at me. Talk to me like a human being, man. You know?
Right. Right. It is interesting, and I mean, it still happens even when I'm out on the sideline now. But it is youth sports is one of the only places that all other like rules and guidelines that we adhere to in most other parts of society like just go out the window.
Yeah.
And it's whether it's we feel entitled because we've paid a fee or whatever it might be, and it goes all the way up to like fandom. But as you boil it down to you know how you're yelling or showing up to at an official or a coach, on the sideline, it's like that would never happen to you with your child's teacher.
Yeah.
Like you would never storm into the classroom and start going off on somebody. Like, so it's just this interesting thing to your point, right? Sports is here, neither good nor bad, but when other factors come into it, that's what dictates where it's going to be. So
Yeah. I remember years ago there was this great commercial of like a middle school orchestra concert, and
yeah,
the
yeah,
parents started standing up and be like, "Come on, where's my kid's solo?" And
yeah,
you're just like,
yeah,
if it's not okay here, right? It's
right.
it's it's
Yeah,
not it's not okay there. And I think you guys do a lot in the world of parent education as
yeah,
well, and I think
yeah.
this is all important. I remember Jim saying years ago, I wish I didn't call it the Positive Coaching
Coach.
Alliance because we do
Right,
so
right.
much more than that. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
this is it. Like, you can't just go teach coaches. You
yeah,
also have to help parents along and engage them, and I think organizations miss the boat, and sometimes they're like, okay, all of our coaches are going to get certified, but not our parents. And
yeah.
then it's miserable to coach.
Right, right. And that's I think Jim tells a story. He was like so excited we got PCA off the ground. We went and did our first coach workshop. People were so excited, and the coaches came up to me afterwards and were like, this is awesome. Like, and so you're going to go and talk to the parents too, right? And he was like, yeah, yeah, we'll talk to the parents. And I think it becomes, that shift of Positive Coaching Alliance is about the culture, right? And the overall ecosystem and the experience. And in order, we often talk about taking a systems approach. And in
Mhm.
order to create that culture, change the culture of your organization, everybody needs to be on the same page. That's the
Mhm.
organizational leaders, coaches, parents, athletes themselves. So, in order to do that, you need to have some different systems in place, ensuring that everybody's on the same page, whether that is, something as simple as a coach job description, right? Going back to the other, have you ever taken a job without a job description, right?
Mhm.
Yet he often will be like, "Hey, John, can you coach Little League this spring?" And you're
Mhm.
like, "Okay, I guess." And they're like, "Great. Here's the equipment. Here's your practice days. Like, pick up the uniforms."
Yeah.
And it's like, "Okay."
Yeah.
So how are we setting up people for success, right?
Yeah.
And whether that be a coach, whether that be a parent, and I think the interesting thing is as PCAs continue to evolve, like we do the majority of our work in youth and high school, but we are also doing things with corporations. We're doing things with professional sports leagues. We're doing things with national teams that competing in the Olympics and their coaches because as people have figured out of like, okay, what does it mean to be a good coach in this
Mhm.
parameter? If I'm a coach and I don't have the tools of how to do that in with what is like accept how I'm going to be held accountable. Like I need the tools to do that. Over the last couple of years, we've done some work with the National Women's Soccer League,
Mhm.
and coming out of just awful environments that were created, and we work with U.S. Soccer Federation on their Safe Soccer Clearance program. And so what we heard from coaches was like, okay, if this is what the league is expecting of me as a coach, some of that might be different than how I've been coaching. So,
Mhm.
what are the specific tangible tools that
Mhm.
I can use and I can start to make my own so that I show up the way that I need to, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it I think comes to, hey, how was I coached when I was growing up? And that's what we get, right? And we've talked about this, like you need to evolve, you need to continue to learn. And even we go back to those mental models and what does it mean to be a coach in 1998? Like, who were the famous coaches, right? They were like this in your face, militant style, motivate out of fear. And now, if you look at, a lot of the people that you've had on your podcast or
Mhm.
like somebody like Steve Kerr, right?
Mhm.
Joy, mindfulness, competition, compassion, that coaching philosophy, people that are building those relationships versus the ones that are, motivating out of fear. So it is how do we equip people with those tools to be able to do their job the way it's set out to be, just like you would with any other walk of life.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a coach, I want to know I always think of like the bowling when you're a kid and they put up the
Yeah.
bumpers. What are the bumpers? Like as
Yeah,
long as I'm
100%.
between here and here, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And where I
Yeah.
where I find a lot of coaches get frustrated is
Yeah.
like I'm told it's all about this culture and treating kids this way. Um, and I do that, and then I still get fired because I didn't win enough or something
Yeah.
like that. And
Yeah.
they're like, but
Yeah.
you didn't tell me it was
That was
just
part of it.
winning, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so there's this disconnect between what we're putting on our website
Yeah.
and what we're asking for in reality. And that's where the bosses of those coaches have to
Yeah.
really say, the athletic directors at high school have to
Yeah.
say, no, this is what this program is about. And
Yeah.
we're going to win sometimes, and sometimes we're not,
Yeah.
but we're
Yeah.
not going to win and compromise all these other things
Other
in
things.
order to win,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and that is where I think ADs need the backing of their principals and their school
Yes.
boards, and coaches need the back of their
Yeah.
coaching directors. And this is the problem. But what's interesting is, like you said, even on the professional level,
Yeah.
right? An NWSL coach, just tell me what I'm supposed to do, and I
Right.
will do that,
Yeah.
right? Like I, I
Yeah.
I can exist within these bumpers,
Yeah.
but then don't, evaluate me on something outside the
Something
bumpers.
different. Right. And I think that the tricky thing is, and it's still like we still need to make this part of the norm, is that the I'm just going to refer to it as like the PCA stuff of coaching, right?
Mhm.
Um, shouldn't be extra or separate,
Yeah.
right? If you want to compete and strive to be the best that you can and get improvement and all those types of things like that, the PCA stuff should be woven into the day to day. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be like, hey, we're going to do our competitive stuff and then we're going to do the PCA stuff over here. It's like, no, because this stuff's actually going to help you
Right.
create a better environment, what's going to lead to better performance. And so it's not that like these two things are going head to head and I need
Yeah.
to choose one. It needs to be like, no, this is actually like how we do things here. This is how I do things as a coach. This is the environment that we want to create because we know that it's going to lead to better performance. And so I
Yeah.
think that's a narrative that we need to still continue to shift, that it's not one or the other, right?
Yeah, and we all hate the word soft skills. Don't call them
Soft skills,
soft
right? Yeah.
skills, right? They're the essential skills,
Yeah.
and the research backs this up. I was just in France with Jean Cote and just had him on the podcast again, and all his research in this is that knowledge of the sport is the foundation,
Yeah.
but all the research on coaching effectiveness has to
Mm.
do with intrapersonal, know myself, and interpersonal skills. So you need the foundation, but you
Yeah.
will only be effective if you understand yourself and you understand people and
Yeah.
you reach that. And again, thank God there's the Sean McVays and the Steve
Yeah.
Kerrs and the
Totally.
Pete Carrolls who have
Yeah.
brought this to the forefront of that coaching is a relationship business. And
Yeah.
now your challenge, my challenge is how do we get this down to the grassroots?
Yeah.
Because I know in a PCA workshop, when I talk to people that I know present for
Yeah.
you, and I know myself, I just did something for Little League in my town the
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
day. And
Yeah.
I asked them, like, how many, like, raise your hand if this is your first year coaching, third of the
Yeah.
room, probably. Okay.
Yeah.
And then um, raise your hand if you don't think enough about baseball or if you don't think you know enough about baseball or softball. And most of those hands stayed up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially amongst women,
Yeah.
right? Especially amongst women, the female coaches.
Yeah.
And then I talked about all these interpersonal skills and whatever of what this is what makes a great coach. And they all are like, oh, I get it. I'm like, now who's a little less afraid that you
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
know enough?
It is. We talk about this a lot. Like being a, can you be a coach is a very intimidating, you know, question or, something to propose to somebody like, hey, we need you to coach, right? And again, it goes back to like setting the expectation. What does that mean? And to your point, like a couple things that you talked about that I wanted to touch on is, hey, like you said it in very quickly, like look how quickly that made it easier for somebody to think that, hey, I can actually do this, right?
Hmm.
And depending on the age level, the type of sport, whatever it might be, like we might need something like at the youngest age when we need a coach, we need somebody that can have a big smile and give high fives and like get kids to just like keep coming back every weekend, right? Whatever it might be. And obviously, as you go on, you need to know the skill, like the skill of the sport and those types of things. But those are some of the things that hopefully the league is set up to provide more support there. We have a little league where we have different experts on the board that can go out to practice and show you how to run the practice, right? And so you're getting that template, or we're going to bring somebody in to teach the girls how to, pitch in softball or whatever it might be. But to your other point of, so like, what are the resources that we're providing to coaches when we are asking them to sign up? And also, how are we how are we reaching out to people to potentially be coaches, and like what are we doing, and like are we making that a welcoming experience, whether it be, for women, for, like for people, what color, whatever it might be, and how are we making sure that, one of the things that we want to ensure is that when kids show up to a sport, that they see coaches that look like them and sound like them, right? And so, a lot of our work around creating more access for kids to play sports centers around recruiting, training, and placing coaches in local communities where there might be a shortage of coaches, right?
Hmm.
And feel like they have the ability to coach because we are giving them the resources and the support that they haven't had before. So
Yeah. Yeah. What? what do you think we should be teaching first? Because as you know, right, our
Yeah.
youth are grassroots coaches, most of whom are volunteers.
Yeah.
Depending on the state they live in, they're doing first aid, they're doing
Yeah.
concussion training. Depending on
Yeah.
the organization, they're doing safe sport training.
Yeah.
They could be
Yeah.
4 hours into it
Yeah.
without talking about basketball or
Yeah.
soccer or
Yeah.
insert sport, right? And it's a challenge. I just and then what last week or 2 weeks ago there was the article in the New York Times about ACL injuries in girls, and
Yep.
I wrote an article
Yeah.
about it, and it's like
Yeah.
if we know that 1 in 6 girls tears their ACL, shouldn't that be an intervention? Because that's
Right.
a lot
Yeah.
higher than concussions
Yeah.
and shouldn't that be something? And yes, it should. So we should
Yeah.
teach that. And there's another
Yeah.
hour. And now what? Like, and we still haven't talked about all these things that are going to make you an effective coach. And so this is
Right.
this is our challenge, and which is
Yeah.
why I think is so important that we're teaching like I think
Yeah.
Vince Minharis from Project
Yeah.
Place that the best form of coach development is coach retention.
Yeah.
We
For
need you to
sure.
come
Yeah.
back next year so we can pour
Yeah.
more into you.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is. I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges, right? Like hey, we need you to come and volunteer and coach. Now, here's all this stuff we want you to do, right? Like, I get it. It's really difficult. I come back to what we talked about earlier of like that environment that you're setting.
Hmm.
And so I think we need to continue to focus on that and equip coaches and train coaches so that they're creating that environment because if kids don't feel that connection and feel safe in that environment that is created by the coach, it doesn't matter what the coach knows from a, skill standpoint because they're never going to get that to the team that they're coaching, right? So we really need to focus on that part of it. And oftentimes when I'm doing speaking engagement, I'll throw something out to folks of like, think of the most impactful coach that you've had in your life, right? And everybody immediately has somebody in their mind. You have somebody right now. Most of the time, it's a positive experience that they're thinking about. But every so often, people are like, oh, still have that negative that sticks with me. And then we start unpacking why do you remember that person, right? And it's like often it goes to like the support, the way they made me feel, like just the connection that I had. They taught me these life skills. No one ever says it's because we won the state championship. It's because we won this. It was the uniforms that we had. It was like
The
they don't talk
crossover
about that.
dribble.
Right. No, no, it was never that. It was
Yeah.
all those other things. And then if you look at where we spend our time and our resources of building programs and training, or if we're training coaches, or like what we're spending our money on, which again, those things are important too. Like we need
Hmm.
field space to be able to play the games. We need, all that. But if what 30 years later, what people are remembering are that experience and what brings them back each year,
Hmm.
both as a child, a parent, as a coach, like that investment is where we need to spend our time, is
Yeah.
making sure that the experience is top level. Because if we don't have that, then we don't have anything. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. And I also think I've said on this podcast many times, youth sports coaching is too important and too
yeah,
impactful for, volunteerism is not an excuse for lack of professionalism or lack of
right.
training,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
too important. You want
Yeah.
to volunteer to hand out flyers at the local
Yeah.
fair? No
Yeah.
problem. You want to skip
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
training?
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
problem.
The
But
amount
you
of
want to
time that we
volunteer?
are,
Yeah.
yeah, again, something we would never do in another part of our life is we drive up to a field, we open the door, the kid runs out, and like we drive off, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know if they have training or if they know what they're doing. It's like, I got this email, you said you're the coach. Okay, right? And I think to that point, we had a experience, our kids playing local park basketball in first grade, right? And you had a parent that was coaching doing more harm than good. And I bet that parent thought he was doing everybody a favor by showing up and raising his hand to coach.
Hmm.
And when one of my kids comes and said, how come that coach didn't go through PCA? Then you start to know that people are recognizing that there is a need, or when, yeah, hey, that's not how a coach should be showing up
Well,
for.
even a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old
Yeah,
can recognize that's not how I want to be treated. Like,
exactly, exactly.
why is he allowed to talk to me? Like, my teacher doesn't talk to me like that at
Right.
school. Like, why is
Yeah,
he allowed to talk to me like that? And
yeah,
and again, that's the thing. I think, Tom Ferry talks a lot about the power of the purse and those who control the facilities
yep,
have
yep,
so much potential to influence coaches going through training,
yeah,
parent behavior, the way kids are treated, and they don't use it enough,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
that this is a lever that we're not pulling, but it could be pulled. I'm always amazed when I go to a high school sports match and the behavior is outlandish, and the
yeah,
athletic director isn't just like, get out,
yeah,
go away.
yeah.
Like, you
Right,
do
right.
not have a right to be here,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
It's like,
it
well, that's
always
how it
amazes me.
is, right? Yeah, and it's difficult, right? And I think it's, we've talked about this evolution of the youth sports space, and obviously, it's been well documented just how much money is in youth sports, right? And I think, you know, when people think about at the end of the day, there's so many people within the youth sports space that are like, well, this is our business. Like we're trying, at the end of the day, we're running a business. We want to, we need to be profitable, all those types of things. Because I've been at different conferences where that's been like that's the point of the conference, but
Mhm.
then PCA is part of that. And it's like if at the end of the day we've lost that the child well-being isn't at the center of everything that we're doing, then we've totally lost the point, right? And so in order for kids to keep wanting to come back, in order for kids to be able to take all the good that can come from youth sports, like if we don't focus on that, then all the other stuff shouldn't really matter,
Yeah,
right? And so that's where we've lost our way a little bit. And you know, I feel like our generation, I'm hearing more and more from parents that are starting to question this a little bit more
yeah,
of like, why are we why did we spend our whole summer for this, like 9-year-old travel baseball program, and then we have 2 weeks to, maybe go on vacation, and then school starts, and then fall sports start, and like, what was this all for, right? And very similarly, I think things moved so fast that it just became, hey, I just need to keep up with everything going around, happening
yeah.
around me. I think people are starting to like, hold on, is this right for us? Like, how do we want to show up?
Hmm.
Because for some people, that might be right for you, and that's go ahead, like,
Hmm.
do all the travel, do all the turn, like that's great. But I don't want parents to feel like they have to do that,
And I
right?
think that's what they feel like. If
Exactly.
we don't, my kid's out of the pipeline, my kid's
Yeah.
out of the system, and there's no way back in. And they're not wrong.
Right, right.
They're,
I know. So that's why we need to start investing in these other, I hear it more and more about, like rec programs as they're getting older. My nephew who's a senior in high school, his high school in New Jersey actually has a intramural basketball program at their high school, which
probably
is like
packed.
so amazing,
Yeah,
right? And it's just like, oh my gosh, imagine if we had that where, hey, it's okay. The end goal doesn't have to be you have to play in high school for the varsity team, right? Like there are other opportunities, but we've stopped investing in that, right? And so that's where we need to try to bring some of this attention back to is how are there more opportunities for kids to keep playing without jumping into, this fast-paced world because you can feel it, right? Our kids are in fourth grade and at times you're like, oh no, did we not do enough? But it's also like, no, they're only 10. And like they're gonna dictate what they're ready for when they're ready for it without us, necessarily needing to push them. And again, I feel like each family is different and
yeah,
what they feel is right for their child, like they can do that. But I also want parents to feel like they have the ability to take a step back and just ask, like, what's the end goal here? And if it doesn't end with playing in high school or I mean college scholarships even a small percentage, but if it doesn't end there, if it doesn't end with a high school career, like are
hmm
we okay with what we're doing right now? And just try to think about that a little bit more.
yeah. I think that's it. That my first book, I said start at the end,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And that's where you and your wife are with your kids. Like
yeah,
when they're 24. what do we want them to look back on
Yeah.
sports as part of their life? And no one is sitting there going, three ACLs and, needing a knee replacement at
Yeah.
30, right? And
Yeah.
no one is saying, I want their self-esteem ruined by some coach who supposedly gets people scholarships, right? So
Right.
if
Yeah.
you know where you are, now work back. So is the program today
Yeah.
leading towards that, or
Yeah.
is it not? And just this fear of like, I think that's I just think so many parents feel fear, not just in sports, in
Yeah.
school, right? Oh my God,
Yeah.
my kid got a
Totally.
B, and so it's really just telling them it's okay. You're not a bad parent if your
Yeah.
kid doesn't decides not to play a varsity sport,
Yeah.
and what's the cost of
Yeah.
them doing it?
Right.
Um, is that really worth it, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think this is just where we have to just keep getting information out there, keep getting information out there, giving people permission to press pause and be like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not going to do it. And I think, I mean, do you think systemic change is possible, or just maybe parts of the system?
It's a good question. It's really hard. I think it's overhauling a system that is like there isn't a real system, like it's a broken system, right? I think is really difficult. So
Right.
often it's sort of like what are the small wins we can get, right?
Yeah, that's what I feel
To
like
start
too.
shifting, right? And even, when you were a part of the hearing in DC, and obviously like private equity was a big part of that conversation, right? And um, obviously, like it would be great if youth sports was the way that when we were growing up, right? Where you just sort of like everyone was playing rec, and then there was an
Hmm.
all-star team, and like then you move to another sport, right? Like
Hmm.
that's great. I don't think we're ever going back to that, right? Like
Yeah.
we're
No.
we're not going back there. So what more investment into the sport has created, again, to my previous point, like we still can't lose the plot of like, hey, this has to be about the kid and their experience.
Hmm.
So when I think about how does PCA show up in this world is like two things. One, we need to make sure that this is not creating an even greater divide of those that are getting left behind, right?
Hmm.
Because there's not an opportunity for them to play. They're getting priced out. They're not having the same, opportunity, or, they don't have the ability to have everything that their more affluent peer might have, right? And so, one, it's like, what can we do to ensure that they still have all the opportunities? The other thing is, if there are week-long tournaments happening throughout the summer, right? How do we make sure that all those coaches that are participating are trained in positive youth development?
Hmm.
How do we ensure that parents know what it means to be a positive youth sports parent, right? When kids are playing, they're going to have an off day. There's going to be downtime. Is there some off-field programming that we can be doing around character and leadership development? We have this amazing partnership with Major League Baseball. Last summer, we were at the RBI World Series, and it
Hmm.
was a week-long tournament, right? And on the off day, we had two teams from different parts of the country come together, and they went through one of our student athlete workshops.
Hmm.
And it was amazing to see these, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids who were competing against each other just be kids for an hour and a half, learn about making themselves better, their teammates better, the game better, and then going out the next day, competing against each other, but also being able to implement things like a mistake ritual into the game, and then being able to talk about like, I learned this yesterday and now I'm using this in my game today, right? Or like that was a great play by him. And even though he's on the other team, like he's a human, he's just like me, and I got to humanize that connection in a workshop yesterday. So part of it is also like, all right, how are we still investing in the experience,
Yeah.
even in this over professionalized and commercialized space? So it's like those are two things that I think about of like how can we continue to show up? Because it's not like we're not just going to go back to the way it is. So we need to figure out how we're showing up in the current space and continue to fight for what we think is like a positive esports experience, and continue to say that all kids need access, and continue to make sure that coaches are trained and parents recognize what this experience can be.
Yeah, and the challenge is because we live in this system that that's not a system, as you said, that's
Yeah.
just hundreds, thousands of individual
Right.
entities. And if I don't like the way lacrosse is being run, I just start my own lacrosse governing body and we do it
Yeah.
differently. And,
Yeah.
it's like I look at, we just celebrated 2 gold medals in Olympic ice hockey. That's
Yeah.
20 years of USA Hockey, ADM, coach
Right. Yeah.
education, cross
Oh,
ice hockey, skills training, no checking before 12, no national
yeah.
championships, all that. And here we are. Look what we're doing. Look how
Yeah.
much better American players have gotten. Look how much the game has grown. Look how we've retained players. But now there's massive movements to go back to full ice hockey
Yeah.
in these big cities where you live.
Right.
There's one
Yeah.
of them, right? I don't know that they ever switched. And you know what they say over and over and over? Like I talk to the hockey people, like, yeah, I know, but it's what the parents want,
Right.
right?
I
And if
know.
I don't do it, someone
Yeah.
else will, and they'll take my kids. And this is goes back to this thing when the business of sport, which there's nothing wrong. I have no problem with people running a business around sports. But when all of a sudden it starts doing things that aren't good for the children in
Yeah.
sport,
Yeah.
that's my problem. And I
Yeah.
don't know how to change that except giving club by club, school by school, league by league the courage to
I
do
know.
things a little bit differently.
It's a great point. It is that like it's that fear of, not even of missing out, but the fear of that like somebody's going to do it, and then we're going to lose out on it, right? Because we didn't just sort of like fall in. But it's interesting. Um, our kids right now are wrapping up their basketball season, and I just need to give a shout out to the program that they're playing in because similar to like the hockey, the small sided, right? Fourth grade basketball, sort of like wide range of talent, and skill and sort of like, we've
Height.
all been in a gym where, right, we've all been in a gym where kids in fourth grade are playing on a full court, and at the end of the game, it's like 15-11, right?
Yeah.
And right.
And
And
10-foot baskets that they
right.
can't
Yeah. Yeah.
even heave it
Exactly.
up there.
Right. And so our kids have been playing in this program where it's like once, during the week, there's an hour of skills and drills and with paid coaches. And then on the weekends, the games are full court, but on a half court, right?
Yeah.
And it's 3-on-3.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, 9-minute quarters, and they're usually like 5 or 6 people on a team, so you're getting a lot of play. But the scores of the game are like 45-40.
Yeah.
And you have a paid coach that's the official that's also doing some teaching, like he'll stop the game
Yeah.
to bring something up. But the kids are getting so many more touches,
Yeah.
getting up and down the court. They're having fun because there's a lot more action. And it's like that's what it should be. And people are gravitating towards it because it's a better experience and it's a better opportunity and there is more improvement happening. They call it the Get Better League. Like this is what we are about. We are
Yeah.
about getting better right now. And then they also have travel teams and they do those types of things. But it's sort of like, oh my gosh, what a great idea of like sort of that ADM idea of what is right for the child at that age. And
Yeah.
I think we just need to, man, if we could wave that magic wand and make sure that like everybody was okay with that and not feel like they were getting left behind either from a parent and child experience or from a business standpoint that they couldn't do that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And 3v3 hockey, same thing.
yeah, right,
3v3
exactly.
soccer, same
Yeah,
thing. And
those are
it's
the
those are the things that like if we just did that and okay, and it's crazy, right? Because like, okay, if you play in this league, your kid's going to get more dribbles, more passes, more shots, more
yeah,
points, more excitement. And
yeah,
in this one, they're going to get a lot less. Which one do you want your kid in? Everyone goes this one, but then they go, oh, but that's not the real game. Yes,
right,
it is, right? We
right,
don't do calculus for second graders either. That's
right,
not
right,
was
yeah,
is addition not real math? No, it's just
yeah,
the building
yeah,
block of math,
I
and
know,
this is our challenge is convincing people that your kid is not falling behind. They're
right,
actually moving ahead of
yeah,
people who choose to go on the big sheet of ice or the big court or whatever because they're
right,
solving more problems, getting
yeah,
more opportunities. And
yeah,
and what's really interesting is when you survey the kids, their self self-esteem or their vision of like, wow, I'm actually pretty good at basketball.
Totally. I mean, there are kids that I've seen play in this league versus 5-on-5, and it's a completely different experience, right?
Yeah,
Because I think it gives them some more of that confidence, right?
yeah,
And I think another big part of this we've talked about parents is, and I think a lot of this comes down to parents like self-reflection on, who they are and what that means for their youth sport with their child's youth sports experience, right? And
yeah,
like to your point of, well, yeah, but if they play in the 3-on-3 league, then they're not playing on the travel team, or they're not, and they're not going to be able to like tell other people that their kids plays on the travel team or post on social that like, oh, we were at this tournament. And, I think that just becomes where they're not doing that for their child. They're doing it for themselves as a
yeah,
parent, right? It's like making them feel that. And I just want to, again, it goes back to that, like, take a step back and can we really define who and what this is about and why we're making those decisions and really like get to the bottom of it, because it's very easy to be like, no, I want to make sure that they have the best possible opportunity to play because they want to. And it's like, all right, what conversations have you had with your child about what they want to do, right?
yeah,
Or what are the things, like if that's the case, then it shouldn't matter if they make the team, if they win the tournament. So why is that? Why are you trying to promote that or push that or post that? So I think it comes down to the parents and doing a little self-reflection of what this means for themselves versus what it means for their child.
yeah, yeah. Even beyond living vicariously through your
Yeah.
kids, it's just this is not defining me as a parent because my
Right.
kid's on the travel team or whatever. And again, you live in Chicago. I don't know, was there 10 million people in Chicago? Can
Right.
a fourth grader really not get a game in Chicago?
Right. Right. Yeah.
You need to go
Yeah.
to Indianapolis to get a game?
Right.
Like, come on,
Yeah.
you know? It's
Yeah.
crazy. Well, last kind of piece,
Yeah.
I know a
Yeah.
big part of your initiative is,
Yeah.
and we've kind of touched on it, but sports equity, and in
Yeah.
equity in your case is that sport is becoming more and more about the haves versus the have-nots
Yeah.
economically, right?
Yeah.
So if you're affluent, right, you're more
Yeah.
likely to participate,
Yeah.
lower obesity rates, high income, or low income kids quit 6 times at the rate of
Yeah.
high income kids. So talk about that and how you're solving that, but why this is so important.
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes down to the fact that like what we've talked about is that, we believe that youth sports, if it's done right, can provide all these amazing things for kids, right? And the truth of it is not all kids have access to even get there, right?
Mhm.
Like they don't even know where the game is. They don't even know, like they don't have the ability, the means to get to where the starting line is,
Mhm.
where their more affluent peers are either at the starting line or even further ahead, right? So the long and short of it is like there's a lack of investment for a variety of reasons, systemic barrier, whatever it might be, that we hope, and it takes a lot of collaboration, it takes a lot of local community type of action to be able to remove the barriers of access for kids in under-resourced communities. And one of the things that we're doing, so we often will set up these local coalitions in a city. Our best story right now, and we have other coalitions that are continuing on their timeline, and we're going to have more good stories. But our best story right now is out of Oakland, where um, we put together a coalition, and we wanted to figure out why is a child in Oakland, why is their youth sports experience different than, somebody in Palo Alto or,
Mhm.
Aspen? And it's like, obviously there's more resources there, correct. But there's also some systemic barriers there of way it's set up. So we have all these key stakeholders around the table in Oakland. We did a little landscape analysis. We realized that kids can't play sports for free until they get to middle school.
Mm.
What we also know, so there's like some pay to play programs, community
Mhm.
organizations, but there's no true no cost program. And what we also know is that kids are not going to just go out and try something new in middle school, right? Like try a
Mhm.
new sport, right? And so with in partnership and working alongside Oakland Unified School District, Oakland Parks and Rec, the community, like the scores program, the lacrosse program, tapping into local city government funding and state funding. A couple years ago, we worked alongside of Oakland Unified School District to start a elementary school sports program, creating 3,000 new youth sports opportunities for kids in Oakland. Now
Mm,
they can go and they can play sports. They can try new sports, right? There is
mm,
this opportunity for them to have something that is keeping them active and it's at
mm,
no cost to them, right?
mm,
And what is then happening is my favorite part of this is like, yes, it's great that more kids are playing, but parents that were surveyed about this program said that they felt closer to the school and the community
mm.
because of this program. And
Yeah,
what we know is that sports brings communities together. It's probably one of the last things we have in our country that can bring a diverse group, people from different background, to one place to enjoy something together if it's done the right way. And so we need to make sure that we're continuing to level that playing field so that regardless of where a child lives or what they look like, that they have access to that program. And so we're doing that work in Oakland and down in San Diego, we have a similar coalition. And what we found there is like the access to facilities at the local park and rec department. And so we helped put together this Park and Rec Council that was able to tap into different funding to invest in new basketball courts, new places for kids to play, which is going to then open up that opportunity, right? Because in some neighborhoods and environments, if there's not something within a 5-minute walk, then there's no opportunity for that
yeah,
child to play, right? So it's like, so for each community that we go to, we want to figure out what are the barriers to access in that community. And PCA is not going to have all the answers, but can we be that backbone of
yeah.
bringing people together and help facilitating some of those conversations?
Yeah, and things, I mean, I just remember 15 years ago when the US Soccer Foundation
Yeah,
shifted from building $1 million turf fields to little
yeah,
sport courts and inner city
yeah,
things and like let's
yeah,
just put in safe places for kids to go play.
exactly.
And the
Yeah,
more of those we can put in, the better
yeah,
because these parks are disappearing or they're not
yeah,
safe or whatever. And
yeah.
so, yeah, it's
Or
got to be
even a
quick,
perfect
cheap.
another perfect example is even like the parks are we worked with Austin Parks and Rec Department. What we saw in Austin was that the the way the field space was being handed out was not fair and equitable, right? And so you have these bigger programs that maybe can come in and pay more for the good times, and then
Yeah.
you might have a community-based organization that can't get on the field. So it's
Yeah.
like, how can we make that system that's a little more fair so that everybody is getting the access that they need?
Yeah, yeah, and I know that's a big Tom Ferry Project Play thing as well,
Yeah,
right? That hey,
yeah,
this is for kids in this community, and it can't just be bought up by the highest bidder. It's got to be available to everyone because all the taxpayers paid for it and everything.
yeah, yeah. And
Man,
I appreciate like Tom and Project Play. They've brought a lot of attention to these issues, and then the work is being done locally in the community by these great organizations that are bringing people together, getting the right people around the table, and then actually being the boots on the ground that are doing the work to try to change some of those statistics that they might be reporting on. So it's a
yeah.
good you need those boots on the ground and those teams that are action oriented to help remove those barriers so that kids can access it.
Well, I love what he also said. He's like, we now have something like $400 million of gambling tax revenue coming in a
Right.
year. What if that was just directed straight to sports?
Yeah.
Youth
Yeah.
sports,
The youth
making it
sports.
better,
Yeah.
building
Yeah.
facilities, training coaches, all that, instead of disappearing into this $7 trillion
Right.
budget or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it could
I
really
think the
have
good thing
a
is there's
huge
more and
impact.
more like states, state of California, you have Illinois, there's more and more like state government and policies that are starting to be um, introduced that around access around coach training. So it's a little bit of a like a big P little p policy that we're looking at right now is sort of, how do we make this just part of how it has to be, right? Whether it is coach training or it's access to programs or facilities, whatever it might be. So it's good that people are taking notice. And again, going back to the very beginning of our conversation, right? Like more and more eyeballs on youth sports for what the good that it can be, but we also need to make sure that it's done right and it's accessible for everybody.
Yeah, amen. Jason, how can people connect with Positive Coaching Alliance in their community? I mean, I know you guys have multiple regional things
Yeah.
and then nationally, but how can people find out if they can set their club or school up with some coach training, some parent education, and athlete education?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I mean, the easiest way is to go to our website, positivecoach.org. We have all of the different workshops that we have, both live in person. We do them via Zoom as well. And then we have some self-paced courses, but you can just click on partnerships, fill out a quick form, and then we'll have one of our local reps reach out to your club. But then also check out our resource center on our website. There's a lot of great resources. It's one thing to go through a training, but we've all been through all different types of training. You walk out and you remember some of it, but then a week later you might not be thinking about it. So what are those message bombardment tools and resources that we might need to continue on and follow us on social media, Positive Coach US. We're going to start pumping out a lot more content on those channels for because we know that's where people are and that's where they're getting a lot of their coach content for better or for worse. So
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, listen, I really appreciate it. I mean, you and I could probably chat for hours here
yeah,
as we have the last time I think I saw you in Chicago and everything. And
yeah, of
so, I really appreciate you coming on, you sharing and the
course.
amazing work that you and your team and all your entities are doing because it's going to take a village, as they say. And
Yeah.
I'm just glad to do my little part and support your work and everything. So, thanks so much for being on the podcast, my friend.
No, thanks for all you do, and I appreciate this platform as well. Thanks, John.
Thank you all for listening. Thanks again to Jason Sachs. Jason, for coming on. Great guy. Positivecoach.org or at Positive Coach US. If you want to connect with them, reach out. As Jason and I spoke about in the beginning, Changing the Game Project, Way of Champions, Positive Coaching Alliance, we are all aligned in how can we make community sports better? How can we make coaching better? How can we make the athlete experience better? How can we make the parent experience better? We're not in competition. We're friends. And when an organization says, "Oh yeah, we're working with PCA," I say that's fantastic. You're going to get so much good stuff. And I think they say the same about us. So um, yeah, just hopefully, if this is something that you said, yes, this is what we need in our community, and if we can't help you, I'm pretty sure PCA can. Okay. So thanks for listening. Thanks to Sprocket Sports. Thanks to our Patreon podcast champions. Thank you to all of our sponsors and the people who subscribe and support this podcast and basically just let our influence grow, let it move from place to place. Every time you share this podcast, that you subscribe, that you leave a review, that you buy a book and share it with someone else, it just makes a difference. And the difference ripples. So hopefully you can go out there this week and use your influence for good because it's not neutral. And the more positive influence you can leave, the bigger an impact we can all make in youth sports. See you again next week, everyone.